take you back to 2008. And I'm sitting in my office, and it's 11 o'clock at night. And I'm the relatively newly appointed head of people and culture in our firm. And I've come into the role full of excitement, because now I can live my passion about how I can develop and inspire people. And yet, the financial crisis has happened. And we don't have enough business for all the people we have in our firm. And I'm sat there as the now leader of the first firm-wide restructuring program. Restructuring program, it's one of those beautiful corporate euphemisms, isn't it? Which actually means that real people I care about, are going to lose their jobs. And that's really tough. And I'm preparing because I know the next day that I have my first meeting with our employee representatives. And I have to decide what I'm going to say. And I don't know about you, but I think we all have those moments in our lives where certain things hit us. And for me, that moment was that I didn't want to be in that position again, where I felt that the destiny of my people were being buffeted by the winds of the economy. And the question I started to pose was, what if? What if it was possible to actually shape the economy, not just be part of it? What if that was possible? Now, I really believe that if you want to have a view on the world, you have to view the world. You have to look out, not in. And so we started to look out and into the future of, if we want to shape an economy, what are the things that are important to pay attention to? And anyone who's done this, where you look up from the now and start to look what's next and what's new, you can't fail to notice the really big themes going on in our world. That the world is reaching the limits of its sustainable resources. And those things can seem quite esoteric, can't they? In the business world, certainly they can seem esoteric, and yet, when you start to think that by 2020, they estimate that half of the world is going to be living in water scarcity, and then you bring that back to, what about businesses that make soap? What does that mean for them? You realize that these big issues are important issues for all of us, for business, for community, and for individuals. And what you also realize is you start to look at those problems, is that none of us on our own can solve them. None of us on our own can solve them. And the old way of operating in business, where if you had an idea, you held it tight in your hand and squeezed it tight until you had a diamond all for yourself, isn't one that really works anymore. Because instead, the only way we can solve those problems is when we open our hands and share our resources and ideas to create something that really can change the world and change the economy for everyone. But what you then realize is that to realize that vision, it takes a different type of leadership to the leadership that exists today. Because in the old world, the leadership is one of certainties. It's one of the leaders who have all the answers and are really quite perfect. As Lucy Kellaway said in her article in the Financial Times back in February, in that world, the real skill that CEOs need to be really great is to be able to lie really well. And we know that doesn't work. And what we need in the new world are leaders who are able to open up possibilities, who are able to ask questions, to know that they're not perfect, they don't have all the answers, and to think about how they can lead differently. How can you lead differently to liberate the thinking of all and to ensure that the work that you do in everything you do has the impact to be better for business, better for community, and better for individuals? And that was the challenge that we set ourselves. And as on any leadership journey, where do we start? You have to start inside, don't you? And so that's where we started within our firm, we started with what we call shared enterprise and exploring the question of, well, what if? What if we didn't want to lead anymore with a small group of senior people having all the ideas and telling people what to do? What if we could liberate the thinking of 4,500 people in our firm? And we learnt some key things that you needed to do to change the environment to make it possible. The first thing was enabling people to bring all of themselves to work, to make that really important connection between what matters to you in here and how does that connect to what we're trying to do as an organization. And you need to create space for that conversation to happen. And I remember at our first partner meeting where we started to have that conversation with people and we were feeding back into the room. And it got to the point where I was about to ask one of our highest fee-earning partners what was important to him. And everyone was sitting back because they all thought they knew the answer. You know, because he was all about the money, right? And then he gave his answer. And he said, well, what's important to me is that my family feel proud of me. And you could have heard a pin drop in the room. Because when you make that connection between what really matters in here and what matters in what you do, and you bring that whole self into what you do, there's no need for this separation in your life anymore. We also learnt that we needed to create the environment where you're exploring possibilities. And that needs to come into everything you do, and it needs to be intentional. So we started with simple things. When you have meetings, instead of framing them around updates and topics to discuss, framing them around the questions that seem important to bring bright minds together to solve. And sometimes that's interesting because if people are used to being told what to do, or maybe don't trust that they're going to be listened to or heard, they may not immediately leap forward. And you have to hold the space, be patient and wait for them to be ready to step forward. I remember one of my team on one of my blogs posting, I feel like I've got my wetsuit on, I'm ready to jump into the water, but I'm worried that when I jump in, I might drown. And so as a leader to think about how do you give people the confidence that when they jump in, if their head goes underwater, you'll be there to support them, to lift them up, to help them take that air and learn to swim. And the final one that we really realized was important was that in this world, when you're looking at everything changing, there's a lot of talk about the word disruption, change, that put people's minds into a place of fear, which never sets you up for your best thinking. And so instead, we had to change the narrative into a place of construction, building. Instead of when people produce an idea, you pointing out every reason why it won't work, to actually say what you like about the idea and how you can build in it. And to encourage people with their ideas. And it's funny, isn't it? Because we all know how to do this. When we have children, when they're learning to walk and they take a stumble, we don't say, well, you're crap at walking, you better get some wheels. We say, that was great, come on, we encourage them. What if we brought that into the workplace of how we actually really help people to step into that space of being generative and bringing all of their ideas together? And I'll tell you the final thing that we learned on that journey, or I learned on that journey, is that as a leader, it's quite tough. Because when you're operating in a world where the expectation of a leader is, I'm perfect, I have all the answers, and I'm going to tell you what to do. But you're the leader who is saying, that's a great question, I don't know. Then what happens is often people just think you're a really rubbish leader. And that feels really uncomfortable, particularly when you're new in role. And so that learning of how to hold that discomfort and build a community of people who can help you to be patient and to sit with the discomfort to enable the organization and you to learn is absolutely critical. So having built that internal capability, what next? Well, building the internal capability was the key step to then enable us to look at how could we really help to shape a vibrant economy. And we needed then, in shaping a vibrant economy and going outside, to look at what was the possibility, what was the opportunity. And we did some research, some numbers. I mean, we're accountants after all. And we established some really interesting things. So, did you know that if the regions in the UK were performing at the same level as the average of the top 7 global economies, that the potential additional income for the UK by 2025 would be an extra £479 billion. £479 billion. Just imagine the schools, the hospitals, the problems that we could solve if we were generating that additional revenue. And then we had another question to ask, which many of my partners asked is, well, what right do we have as an organization of 4,500 people to get involved in thinking we could shape a vibrant economy? And I think it's one that we often have as individuals, don't we? Of, what right have I? How can I make a difference? But then when you looked at it another way, we looked at our sphere of influence and realized that we acted for 50% of the FTSE 100. Our private sector clients employed 6.6 million people. That's 25% of private sector employment in the UK. And we worked with 40% of the public sector. And in that work, we were able to see the opportunities for collaboration across those spheres, and importantly, had the relationships and the opportunities to bring people who didn't normally come together to collaborate. And so we decided to hold 12 city inquiries and 7 thematic inquiries across the country, posing questions that we felt were really important to unlock that potential. And a month ago, we started in Sheffield. And we posed a question that actually came up from the community, not imposed from us, but came up from questions, which was, how would we take a city like Sheffield, which, as in Birmingham, has this great, proud industrial heritage, how would we enable that city to be a dynamic, innovative center at the heart of Europe? And we brought over 200 people together who were all doing great work in their individual silos, but many of whom hadn't connected together before. And on the day, we generated over 700 ideas. And if I tell you that through the stage of discovery, through the stage of dreaming and design, that we even had bankers rapping on stage about the vision for Sheffield, you get an idea of the energy on the day. But what we also know is that having the ideas isn't enough. Because if we're really going to change, those ideas have to turn into impact. So in a month from now, those leaders are coming together again to look at the progress made in turning ideas into action. And the community have voted together on the ones they think that will make the biggest difference. And so the opportunity in what I'm saying is not that what I'm saying is anything new, but it's really recognizing that the them and us narrative we create between business and society is really unhelpful. That it's only when people with ideas and resources come together on the important questions and work together that you change the situation. We are in the rather sad position of passing on a legacy to the next generation that will be worse than the world that we inherited. And that is something that all of us need to be invested in. And I put it to you that when we can bring our whole selves to everything that we do, when business and community can work together hand in hand, we can choose to do something about it. Thank you.